Police in Greece have arrested a journalist who published a list of the country's political and business elite who hold Swiss bank accounts. The whistleblower accuses the Greek government of failing to go after tax evaders, while at the same time preparing to push through more belt-tightening measures for the struggling population. We can discuss this further now with Yanis Varoufakis, a professor of economics at the University of Athens, now joining us live here on RT. A pleasure to see you today. Well, let's talk about this arrest here. The arrest being criticised in Greece as an attack on free journalism, when the authorities ultimately should be attacking tax evaders. What's your reaction to that?
I'm aghast at this development. A leading, possibly the leading, investigative reporter in Greece has been arrested for effectively serving the public interest, because this list that is the center of contention at the moment, let us not forget the history behind it. It was sent by Mrs. Lagarde when she was still France's Minister of Finance to the Greek Ministry of Finance 2.5 years ago, with the intention that the Greek government should be given the opportunity to investigate the people who were named on that list for possible tax evasion. There is no doubt that most of the people on that list are not guilty of anything. It's just a list of Swiss bank accounts held by Greek citizens with one particular bank, HSBC, in Geneva. And the idea that Mrs. Lagarde has was that the Greek government should investigate to see if some of those accounts could not be justified in terms of their legitimate...
But I'm sorry to interrupt. As you're saying, though, it's been 2 years since Christine Lagarde handed over this list of tax evaders to Greece. There's been little, if any, action ever since then. Why is the government so sluggish in going after tax evaders when it needs money so badly?
Well, your guess is as good as mine, but the vast majority of the Greek population fear that the Greek politicians are simply not particularly keen to expose the network of corruption which involves, to a large extent, Greek politicians and businessmen and women who are in cahoots and have a cozy relationship with them. Now, the fact here is that in the last 2 months, this list is the center of debate in Greece, because the two former finance ministers have been exposed for having sat on that list for 2 years now, and they are trying to explain away why they were sitting on it. They are trying to blame the tax authorities. They say that they passed it on to the tax authorities. The tax authorities did not investigate. Meanwhile, Kostas Vaxivanis, the journalist at the center of today's storm, got hold of this list and did what any journalist...
Well, and as any journalist would like to do and hope to do in a society of free speech, ultimately being arrested for once again presenting this list here that's been around for 2 years. But can I ask you, though, you talk about tax evaders, you talk about the bankers, you talk about the politicians. Who's in bed with who here, unless they're all in the same bed together?
Look, Greece traditionally, but not only Greece, most countries, right, has had a political elite which was very closely intertwined with the business elite. And let's not beat about the bush. The great problem with tax evasion in Greece, which, by the way, I don't think is the reason why Greece is in the state it is, but nevertheless, it is one of the reasons why Greece is being portrayed internationally as a corrupt country, and Greeks on the street who pay their taxes and work very hard and who are suffering are incensed that this is how they are portrayed internationally. The fact is that for the last 30, 40 years, the rich in Greece have have enjoyed a kind of tax immunity. They're not really tax evaders. They're immune from tax because of the cozy relationship that they have with politicians that legislate in a way that makes that tax immunity.
Okay, as you say, so basically, you know, the bankers, the politicians, tax evaders, they are ultimately in bed together. They're in their elitist circles of protecting each other. But all it does is basically add to the growing frustration among the struggling Greeks on how the government is handling the country's economic troubles. I get the impression you're saying that ultimately the Greek government is indifferent to what the people think about them.
They're far more interested in not being caught by, the long arm of the law themselves. They are far more interested in covering up the trail that leads to particular Swiss bank accounts. Look, for 3 years now during this crisis, while austerity is being imposed upon the vast majority of workers who have no alternative but to pay their tax, politicians of the major parties are pointing moralizing fingers at the weak members of Greek society, saying, oh, you have not been paying your taxes, you've been tax evading, this is why we are in such a terrible state. So now that the truth is coming out about their tax evasion and about the fact that tax evasion is a game played very skillfully by the rich, and as it has been happening in Greece for the last 30 or 40 years, now they're particularly keen to be idle in the face of such a list.
Well, and I'm sure it comes as no surprise to their colleagues who walk in the same circles as they do. We were just showing pictures here from October the 18th, as you were speaking. October the 18th of downtown Athens. Once again, people on the streets showing their frustration and again, perhaps showing as well that the politicians really have no ear for that of the public. Yannis Varoufakis, Professor of Economics at the University of Athens. A pleasure to have you on RT today. Thank you.
Thank you.